Hi Stephanie, it's Rob. I'm over at the house. I just wanted to do a quick video reviewing a couple things after I went through with Eric, the electrician. He came up with a couple questions that I wanted to run by you. Number one, in the front foyer over here, we've got this closet where you wanted a light and a switch. He noticed that the millwork trim was really tight here, and he said he didn't really have a great place to put a switch. I know you said you didn't want a hinge switch on the door, so he's asking as an option. For the light fixture inside, they do have actual motion sensor light fixtures. In other words, it would be a fixture that would be inside the closet, and as soon as you open the door, it senses the motion, it comes on, and then when you close the door and there's no more motion, the light goes off. So it's not a hinge switch, but it's not a physical toggle switch, and that way you can't accidentally leave the light on even if the door's closed, and we don't have to worry about cutting into the millwork and worrying about how tight the trim is on either side. So number one, we wanted a clarification on that. Number two, he wanted to know about the living room in here. He says he thinks he's able to get wiring into those two spots where he wanted the two pot lights over the living room at the front sort of alcove. However, he wanted to know where you wanted those two pot lights switched from. Do you want them switched from over there by where the piano is going to go, or do you want them switched from over here so they're closer to you when you walk in the door and you have the switch right there? So that was the first question as far as this room goes. He wanted to know if you wanted those two pots switched on the right side or the left side. Second question is, currently the light switch to this room turns on the chandelier, and those two sort of scalloped sconces are controlled by their own independent little switch inside the fixture. He's asked if you would like him to change it so that those two fixtures are either on the same switch as the chandelier, which I think would probably be better not to, because I think having that light on its own might be a nice detail. However, he says you also have the option of maybe adding a switch somewhere to have, if you maybe put a switch here for those two pots, you could also have a second switch to control those two sconces. And similarly, there's also this sconce over here that also doesn't actually have its own switch. It's controlled by the little turning switch underneath the fixture. And he'd like to know if you want that to be on a switch so that you don't actually have to go over to the fixture and click it and turn it on and off. If you'd like it to leave it on the on position all the time and then just flick a switch on the wall somewhere to turn that one on. So we have one sconce and then the pair of sconces that we want to know if you want them switched independently, if you want them on the same as the chandelier, if you want all three sconces on together, and regardless of whether we separate them or how many things you put on one switch, where you want the switches if we did that. Or we could leave it exactly the same, just keep them powered up always, and then all you have to do is reach inside and turn them on independently. Personally, I think I like the idea of having a switch to turn them on, so you don't actually have to go into each one and turn a little knob on each switch. So that's the questions he had regarding this room. The next question is, in the dining room, you got the chandelier, which is the only thing controlled by the chandelier switch, but you have these two sconces, which were again always powered but independently controlled by the little knob on each sconce. Again, same question, do you want to have the two sconces on the same switch as the chandelier? Do you want to have that single gang switch turn into a two gang switch, so you have two side-by-side switches, one controlling the chandelier and the second controlling the two sconces? Or do you want to keep it with one switch for the chandelier and continue to turn the sconces on manually from underneath each actual fixture? That was another question he had. Another question, which I think is actually a little more pertinent because it's a safety issue and a waterproofing issue. The two switches out here, and frankly I actually was surprised when I saw these. He said it's not unheard of to have an exterior switch, but normally if it's an exterior switch it has to be a waterproof box and a waterproof switch. These are not, but I know he said one of these switches is supposed to control the sconce here, the other switch is supposed to control the sconce over here, and frankly we're not actually sure which switch controls the sconce that's on the fence over there. What he wanted to know is, if we're going to go to all the trouble of rewiring the house and getting rid of all the knob and tube and doing things right, number one, for the purposes of doing things right, I would definitely kill these switches and move them to the inside. However, I wasn't sure if you used this door off the bump out to get to the porch more often, or if you use the sliding door more often, or if you use them equally, you know, sometimes you go out here, sometimes you go out there. Reason being, we could, if you never really use that door and you only use this door, we would take these two switches and put them on the wall right here. You have two switches. One would flick on this overhead light, the other one would flick on the one over there, and whichever one is paired with that, the one down over there on the fence, that would come on too. That would be if you wanted it here, if you use this door most often. If you use that door most often, he would put nothing here, and he'd actually move the two switches inside the bump out room next to the door over here. So that before you go outside, you'd have two switches here to control the lights. However, if you also use this door equally as much as that door, we could put them both, this one over here and the one over the door, on each of them on a three-way switch. So we'd have one three-way for the, two three-ways, one here and one by the sliding door for the patio door, and one three-way here and one three-way over here, controlling the light over here. And again, the one down the fence, I presume, probably comes on. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, probably comes on with this one. So it was just a matter of how you wanted them switched, and if you wanted them closer to the sliding door, which I personally suspected you use more often than that door. It doesn't look like you use that door very often, but again, just for confirmation, it'd be helpful to know. The other thing I wanted to draw your attention to after reviewing with him is that he said he cannot and will not put another plug over here on the mirror. It's going to crack, it's going to get destroyed, and we'll be in a whole can of worms. What he's suggested, and which is an option, is we can actually put a surface mount box inside here. You've already got valance lighting, so what we could do is run a wire through here, have a surface mount box with a face mounted plug with a face plate, make it all safe, but the second plug, rather than plugging everything into here, you'd still have another plug, it would just be up instead of into the wall. He can do that. The only thing is if you put your toaster underneath it, the heat goes up and it's a little bit unsafe. So he said if you were going to do that, it would meet code, but he would definitely want to make sure you keep anything that would, put heat further up. The other thing he did note is that this one here and this one here need to be changed because they do not meet code. He said they actually don't technically need to be GFIs, I think is what he said, but they do have to be split plugs. They do have to be GFIs, but they don't have to be 20 amp GFIs. They can be 15 amp GFIs, but they would be split plugs, meaning there's a little copper connector between the two, and you'd actually have them separated so that the top one is, if that one trips, it doesn't trip the bottom one, and vice versa. I think is how it works. He'll explain it better, but the point is that you can still have one plug here, you can still have a plug here, you can add the third plug up above, but they have to be changed to meet code because they're within a very close range of the sink. So that's just something I wanted to bring to your attention. The one over here, he said, no problem, he can totally put a plug back here. It would probably go up a little bit higher just because of we want to stay up above the oven space, so it'll probably be closer to up here. The one over here, he says, not a problem. And I think the one over here, he said he thinks he can get a wire here. He's not 100% sure. He'll give it a shot, but he's not 150% confident he can get you that plug, but he'll do his best. Other than that, I do believe everything we talked about as far as adding new wiring, adding new plugs is fine. The plug over here, we're good. The plug over here, we're good. The plug on the outside, we're good. The two new plugs side by side over here. Oh, the last thing he asked for the back, even though you guys do have that outlet that's sort of built into the steps of the porch over here, he did want to know if you wanted to actually put a house-mounted exterior plug rather than having to go over to the front of the porch. It's a little bit safer because snow won't build up in front of the box like it will over there, which is a bit of a water electricity hazard. If it's over here on the wall or even over here on the wall, it'll be up high enough that snow won't gather on it. It'll be a waterproof box. It's a little bit safer, and it's a little bit more accessible than having to go over to the corner of the porch. So again, just something he proposed. I believe that was everything he wanted to get a little bit better confirmation on. If you could just review this video and get back to me with some thoughts and answers on those questions and details, that'd be gratefully helpful. Thanks so much.